auditorium, so to say, or our conference room in the center on the Hotel Chai in Jerusalem, and the hopefully hundreds, if not thousands, I have no idea how many, worldwide through modern technology, Zoom and otherwise, and YouTube. It gives me particular pleasure as the chairman of the JCPA, Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs, to be the introducer here for two reasons. One, the fact that we're having a meeting, a public meeting for the general public and for our own staff, after too long a period, a couple of years, of not having this activity, is actually a sign that we're fully back, we're on the scene, we exist. Jerusalem Center is continuing its activities, and one of the major features has been the public lectures. So that gives me great pleasure as the chairman of the board to have this introduction. The second one, incidentally, the person who's presenting happens to be my daughter-in-law. So, although I'm pasul eidut, because I'm karov, we should not do too many compliments to people who are part of our family. That's, that's inappropriate. It really gives me particular pleasure to introduce Yulie Khromchenco. She doesn't use the name Edelman, I understand, but that's fine. She's still our daughter-in-law. As you all know, that in February, at the end of February, there was a Russian invasion of the territory of Ukraine. It has and continues to have major geopolitical consequences. That is not what we're going to discuss this morning. But we're having a discussion, a presentation discussion, probably the largest and the most serious humanitarian crisis that has existed, surely in Europe, some people would say even the world, since World War II. And we will hear the details in a minute or two, that the particular characteristic, I wouldn't use the word unique, because that's almost in a positive sense, of this crisis, in contrast to other crises which led to refugees. The refugees here, which measure a number in the millions, are of a particular character. It's based on a separation of families. The men and the families of the refugee families have remained in Ukraine as part of the defense force, of the army, and all different types of responsibilities. And the mothers and the children are the refugees. This is very, very different than any other refugee group. Sometimes the male in the family is there, sometimes it isn't. Here it's categorical. So the crisis is not only that they picked up and left their home and then minutak, it's also the issue and the dynamics and the impact on the children of the separation from the male figure in the family. Therefore, somebody who is not a geopolitician, but somebody from the educational world, from the psychoeducational world, someone who understands the impact of educational settings or situations on children, has a particular insight to what is going on. And Yulie was already, within weeks after the invasion, clearly there was this issue of what's going on with these refugees, how long are they going to be separated from their families, what type of programs, was invited to get involved and establish programs to serve this population. Tragically, the population has only grown, the problems have gotten more complex, and Yulie is now as in a full-time position responsible for organizing the programs for these families, particularly the focus on the needs for the children. I don't want to give too much of a background, but Yulie's background is in education, both a BA and MA, has worked in many educational settings, and therefore has a particular work experience, not only knowledge, work experience, working with these children, these families, and the impact of dynamics of society, how this affects the children. So it really gives me great pleasure, I would say honor, to have the opportunity to introduce my daughter, Yulie, who's going to make a presentation. Presentation will be roughly around 40-45 minutes. It'll give us time for open discussion, questions, and otherwise. My pleasure, Yulie.
Thank you, Arthur. It's a great honor and pleasure to be with you here and to present this topic to all of you, both sitting in the room and on Zoom and otherwise. I'm at the moment I have this big title of being the East Europe program manager of Early Starters International Organization. early starters in an organization that focuses on early age children in a crisis situation around the world. The organization was founded in 2017 by Ran Cohen-Aronov, an educational entrepreneur that is also sitting here in the audience. And the main idea, the main concept of the organization is simple. When we're talking about early age children, we're talking about children in the formative age of building their personality. And every crisis that affects them at this time lays a big impact on their life, on their future in general. And so if we encounter crises in this age and we manage to reduce trauma at some point in this age, we affect children's future. So the organization was working in different countries in Africa, in Haiti, in Greece, working with Syrian refugees in different strategies, as you can see here, disaster and risk reduction, training of both parents, women, and of caregivers for children. And in the beginning of the war in Ukraine, the decision was to start looking at some way to be part of the healing process there, of trying to repair and reduce trauma with children. And that was the point where the organizations met me. So this is me. Standing in the border of Moldova, which is a corridor country near Ukraine, in Palanka, which is the border point, in March 2022. As you can see in the picture, I look quite shocked, and it was indeed a major shock point. And I will tell you a bit about how I came to be there and how I came to be what I am now at this point. My name is Yulie Khromchenco. As you can hear from my family name, which I haven't said, sorry, Arthur. I have Ukrainian origins. My family, my father, from my father's side, lived in Zlatopol, now named Novomirgorod, in Ukraine, in the center of Ukraine. And my grandparents came to Moscow, where I was born, and raised till the age of 2. And on the age of 2, my parents immigrated to Israel, and from then on, I was raised as an Israeli in the Israeli education system, but I kept the language thanks to my parents. Okay. Okay. Yeah, sure. And I have an interesting relationship with my Russian identity, which I dealt with during the years. And it appears so that in February 2022, when the Ukraine-Russia war started, I felt that it's a very personal war for me. Like, it affects me personally. And I went with this feeling for several days, not really knowing what to do. And then, as things happen sometimes, I saw a WhatsApp message in one of the groups saying there is somebody I knew, Ran, we knew each other from our former work in the Institute of Democratic Education, that is looking for an educator speaking Russian to work in Moldova with Ukrainian refugees. And that was like a huge thing. And then I called Ran and I said, well, why didn't you call me? And he said, do you want to? Can you? I was then a director of a leadership program for teachers. I was working like a full-time job. And yet it seems important enough to go. So I said, well, I'm willing to go. And then he called me and he said, in 2 days, we're going to Moldova. And then we went. Back then, there weren't any direct flights to Moldova. We went through Poland, and from there to Romania, and from there by car to the Moldovan border, and then after that by car to Chisinau, the capital of Moldova. And along the way, we saw a huge line of cars going the other direction. Ukrainian cars, we can see by the numbers, Ukrainian cars, kilometers by kilometers of people fleeing Ukraine, trying to look for a safe haven for themselves, for their families, for their dogs and cats, going somewhere. And that's a moment where I really want to ask you to use your imagination and try to imagine this moment, this morning of the 24th of February, where people like you and me, middle class people, woke up in the morning, had their daily morning routine, brushing teeth, drinking coffee, and suddenly there is a huge explosion, and then another one, and another one. And then the radio goes silent, and the next moment it says, the Russian invaded Ukraine. We are in a stage of war. And what happens to people at this moment? What do people do? And what many people did at that moment is, and that's an amygdala reaction, they flee. They take themselves, they take their family, they take their kids, they take their pets sometimes, they fling some stuff in some suitcase, get them in the car and go. They don't know exactly where they're going. They don't have a plan, a rational plan. It's a moment where people don't think rationally. And they go. And then, again, their cars, not everybody thought about it in advance because they couldn't think about it in advance. It was sudden. The car doesn't have gas. So they go to the gas station. There are already a line of people in the same condition waiting for the gas station to give them gas so they can flee. The gas runs out. They go to the bank, they want to draw up money. The money ends, and the workers in the bank say, we don't have more money to give you, so people just flee wherever they can, either to the Polish border or to the Moldavian border, or to any border they can think of. Sometimes suffer through explosions going on around them. They have to duck, they have to wait in the car, they have to look for refuge on the way. They spend time in lines, endless lines of cars for 10 and hundreds of kilometers, waiting for the border to open. And then eventually they cross the border, and then what? They're in a new country. Their phones don't work anymore. And where would they go? Who will receive them? So that was the kind of point Palanca was at that point. Palanca is a place, Palanca is a very small rural village in Moldova, which happens to be the crossing point between Ukraine and Moldova. That there's basically nothing, just a plain field. It's cold, around -6 degrees. And people are just coming by hundreds, by thousands, and again, which people? Women and children. And that's maybe a different, we have to state, between the 24th of February and the 25th of February, because on the 25th of February, there was also already a martial law installed in Ukraine that said that the men cannot leave. We know some families that actually had the opportunity to leave as a family before, so now they're a whole family, but from the 25th, the men from 18 to 60 are not allowed to leave Ukraine, so only the women, the children, the elderly are going through the border, and they are the refugees. And that's who we meet in the border. And what are we going to do? How are we, or people like us, organizations, international organizations, local volunteers, families from the nearest village in Moldova that really want to help, what do we do? What's the priority? And at that point, it was clear for us that our priority and what we tried to start do is to give a space, a warm space, to the women and early age children, the smallest children, the women that still breastfeed, yeah, that don't have any place where they can sit, and feed their children, the small kids that are absolutely lost. Like, if the grown-ups do understand something about the situation and its logic, the kids are, snapped out of their lives, going to a place they don't know, not knowing what's going to be, how a kid will handle that. Before I'll get into the safe space and its details, just a quick look on the map to understand what we're talking about. Well, you can see Ukraine. Here you can see Kiev, the capital. Palanka is about here. That's the crossing to Moldova in the south. Many of the people that flee here are people from Odessa, which is on the south also, from Nikolaev here. And they're going to Moldova. Many of the people of central Ukraine flew here to Poland, to the Polish border. And then from there, some of them move forward to other countries, to the European Union countries. Some of them stay. And if we're jumping ahead to what's happening now, here you can see a map by UNHCR, by the UN Committee for Refugees, that shows around the numbers. The numbers are accurate for around July, August, of refugees that are going to all the countries here. The countries directly bordering Ukraine and the countries that are near them. So Poland received a huge load of refugees, more than 1 million refugees. Moldova, which is, again, relatively small country, a country that is labeled the poorest country in Europe. Now, Moldova and Ukraine are competing on this dubious title. Many small countries like Czech Republic, which is relatively small countries, received a very huge number of refugees regarding its population. And we're, as Arthur mentioned before, we're really looking at the biggest refugee crisis since the Second World War. And the crisis hasn't ended. It's continuing. Now we're talking about 8 months since the beginning of the war. There are still mothers and children roaming Europe and its surroundings. Some of them are also in Israel. I'll talk about that later. In quite a lost state of mind. And that's also something that has to be understood, I think, to understand the thing that I will talk about later on when I will talk about why a safe space is so important. Because these are people that are living every day the unknown reality. Like, we're not talking about immigrants. We're not talking about people that move to another country and now are in a mindset of trying to get used to the new country, trying to build a new life in the country. There are people that, again, were taken from their lives, from their normal, mundane, middle-class lives, and now are living in a totally different country. Some of them, by the way, never left Ukraine before, and having to cope with everything that, to build their lives from scratch. To build their lives from scratch, to build their lives for themselves and their children, knowing that half of their family, sometimes more, is still in Ukraine, and are suffering all the hardship that that brings. So, like, I think when I talk to mothers of our children in our spaces, the most difficult question I can ask them is, what are you going to do next month? And we do these conversations because we need to assess needs, we need to know whether they're staying, whether they're going. And each time I ask this question, I see the faces of the mother are falling, and they tell me, I don't know. I really don't know. Because my heart is torn. I want to be with my husband. My husband is fighting with the ZSU back there in the east of Ukraine, or staying in their house in Kiev, which now suffers shortages of electricity and is cold and dark and lonely. And I don't know what to do. I don't know if it's better for me to stay in the safe haven or Moldova or Prague or Israel, or to take my kids and go back, and at least we'll be together as a family. That's a very, very hard emotional situation to live in every day, already for 8 months. So, I'm going back to Palanka and to what we started to do there. Yeah, you can see here people in thermic blankets. Yeah, that was one of the first things that the volunteers from the international organization brought, just to make people warm, because it was very cold. And you can see there like a small roof of of a tent, a blue tent, with a beer logo on it. It's the Chisinau beer. It was donated by the Chisinau beer company. And that's a place where we started building a safe space for mothers and children. And again, it's cold, the ground is cold, so first you have to lay down the foundations, like in the most physical way, So we put some wooden decks, and then we put some nylon. We did that, by the way. We have to mention that. We weren't alone. And again, in such crisis situation, no organization should or can work alone. We came together with a delegation of Israel, which is another Israeli-based international organization that works in crisis situations. So we were together, like here you can see the main logistician of Israel team, building the actual tent, and then trying to make it suitable and warm and cozy for mothers and children. So that's how it looks, and that's like the first encounter, which is very important, again, when we talk trauma, when we talk about the first receivers, the first people that meet the children, the mothers, in the border. We want them to feel accepted. We want them to feel that somebody sees them, that somebody smiles to them, that they have some warm and cozy place where they can be, when they can play, when they can draw. And that's like the first impression of the new country that receives them and for their next stage of life. Now if we're talking about, again, if we're jumping several months ahead, that's how the Palanka tent looked after that. You can see here things like kids' drawings. You can see which is also something that we thought as a child education expert that is very important for children to feel their capability and belonging. Right? We can draw something and we can leave it here. We can give it to the space and other kids will come and look at it. And in these first drawings, we many times saw kids drawing the Ukrainian flag. You can see that here in the picture, yeah? the blue and the yellow. Again, feeling of belonging. Kids drawing something about their experiences. Yeah, house that got shelled, tanks, all kinds of stuff like that. We'll see some more examples like it. But also very much kids stuff. Mickey Mouses, Huggy Buggies, yeah, that's another child hero. All kinds of things that remind us that these are children. These are not grown-ups, and even if like this experience suddenly made them face with very grown-up reality, they're still children, and what we try to do in our spaces is to give them this childhood experience back, to remind them that they can be children again. So, what happens with refugees after Polanka? In Polanka, they stay for an hour, sometimes several hours, but then, especially as the time continues, buses come to the border to take refugees to some more permanent place of stay. And one of these temporary permanent places is a stadium, an athletic stadium in the capital of Moldova, in Chisinau, that you can see here. It's a stadium that became very fast a place to host refugees, 800 beds, all of them together, no privacy, very little hygiene, 2 showers for each gender, and everybody is together, are together, men, women, children, elderly, pets, again, dogs, cats, all of them together in one space. And when we came there, our again first feeling was that we have to make some kind of a space here for the children, in order for them to feel safe, in order for them to get some of their childhood back. So Ran and me were wandering around the stadium, trying to look for a space where we can do that, and eventually we came to this corner. It's a kind of a garbage corner where, quite dusty, where the stadium people used to put like all kinds of things they didn't need. And we tell the manager of the stadium, we want this corner. Can you give it to us? Okay. I'll try to speak louder. And in this corner, we decided to build our own safe space. And then we went shopping. We went to hardware stores in Chisinau, tried to find some materials, some cloths, some ropes. And eventually, we built this. It was in the corner of the stadium. It did have some kind of a door, some kind of a border, something that differentiated it from the space outside. We brought toys. We brought something that proved to be very important in safe spaces like that. We brought a small house, a plastic small house. I'm sure everybody that has grandchildren has some kind of a house like that in his home or his garden. And we saw how much this house was popular with the refugee children, because in, again, social play of kids, social dramatic play of kids, that's the space that they identify as a home. And then they play things like a restaurant, a kitchen. We have some small kitchen utensils, plastic ones. And that's what kids started to do. And that was quite an amazing moment, because a moment ago there was nothing, and then it was something, and then the kids came and they knew what to do with it. So like the basic childish instinct of being a child is still there, and that's a very optimistic thing to encounter in such a situation. So there were about, in the first day, there were about 50 kids in this space, quite crowded, all kinds of ages. We never said, even if our organization is focused on early age children, we never said no to anybody. And kids were doing stuff. They were building things from Duplo, they were playing in the house, in the kitchen, they were building towers, they were drawing, they were building puzzles, and dynamics, good dynamics were created there. older kids took care of younger kids. Different kids had their roles and opportunities to stand out and to help. Kids' drawings were drawn and stuck to the walls because, again, it was very important for us that they will feel, even in this temporary place, that they belong. And you can see here kids draw different kinds of things. We still have the Ukrainian flag. We have the Moldovan flag, you know, the blue, yellow, and red. And they draw all kinds of things. There was a kid, for example, named Macron, who really liked to draw me and Ron. Yeah, he kept drawing and he kept showing us pictures of us in different situations. Yeah, of us eating in McDonald's, of us living in a house, of us going to on the street. Like, he was trying in this situation to recreate his former life as a way to bridge this enormous, ununderstandable gap between his former reality and his reality now. And that's what many children do. They try through play, through creative work, to bridge the gap and to understand things through living it, through playing it. That makes them calmer. That makes them focus. And also this, yeah, many kids drew tanks, many kids drew planes, missiles, and again, the thing about Ukrainian flag is really interesting, and we see that till now in our centers. Kids have pride, have really strong national pride in their country, in their nation, in the war. They are really involved in it. They're really into it. They hear everything. They hear all the news that their parents listen to. They are constantly online, listening to their fathers or their grandfathers fighting in the war and telling impressions from there. And they're really engaging in it. There are spaces where every morning the kids, by the way, the kids are usually initiating it. They sing Czerwona Kalina. Czerwona Kalina is a popular Ukrainian song, a folk song that became some kind of an unofficial anthem of Ukraine. So every morning you see the kids ask the educator, please put for us the music of Czerwona Kalina, and they sing. So that's, yeah, you can see here tags. And also this, yeah, the kids hope that there will be a better future someday. Here you say, it's written Ukraine, peace, Russia. They hope that maybe if there will be a peace, they can return back home to their beloved things, to their beloved friends, to their reality. That's also a picture I really like. That's Andrei. Andrei is 10 years old. He's living now in Belz, in Moldova. He draws amazing pictures, mainly of cats and dogs, who are also symbols. Yeah, this cat is called the Ghost of Kiev. And it's a cat that he draws it in different situations, sometimes in military form, fighting for the Ukrainians, sometimes here, smoking a pipe. And that's his way of coping into this situation. So, back to us. Manege, the stadium was our second safe space. And after that, we started building safe spaces in other locations in Moldova. This, for example, is a safe space we built in Mold Expo, a kind of an expo building. Used to be a Corona hotel, a COVID hotel, and now becoming also a place to host refugees. This is again a corner in some corridor that became a safe space. After that, we got a room which was more stable. You can see here in the picture, we're having a birthday. That's also something that was important for us to establish. In every space, we have this big whiteboard where we put all the kids' birthday dates, like we do in kindergartens. But there it means something else because it's a way to count time. One of the things that people in traumatic situations, and especially kids, lose in traumatic situations is the feeling of time continuum. So having like holidays, regular holidays, having something to check the time and the time order is important, and birthdays are always a good time for celebration and for everyone to wish good things to other kids. And many kids in this situation do say, I hope the next birthday you will celebrate with your friends in your house, with your family. Even little kids, they understand that, and that's what we wish for each other. So, I mentioned the word safe space quite a lot, and I think you intuitively understand what it is, and you saw some pictures, but I would like to ask you, what do you think is the most important and most vital component of a safe space? What makes a safe space a safe space? Yeah.
Somebody who protects you.
Okay. I'm happy for your answer because it's somebody. It's not only the building, it's not only the room, it's a person. Great, thank you. Other answers? Other ideas? What's important? Maybe I'll ask it wider. What's important to have in a safe space?
Isolation.
Hmm?
Isolation.
Isolation. Yeah,
from the
right.
world.
Very correct. Yes, some kind of.
Information.
Some kind of a space where some things can be kept outside. Some information, like the gruel details of the war, can be kept outside. Here, we don't always talk only about the war, what happens much in refugee shelters. Yeah, kids live in a space, sometimes for several months, with mothers that are always hearing the news. Yeah, and they always hear the news. Here they can deal with something else. They can have some kind of a refuge from this part of their lives. What else is important?
Control. It's a place where there's control.
Control. Okay. A schedule. A schedule. It operates in certain times. It ends always. It begins always in the same time. It ends in the same time. There are a circle of things that happen. There are several rituals that happen. We have spaces where they've established a drinking tea kind of ritual. Yeah, every day, all the kids come and they drink tea. And that's a very important ritual. The kids are preparing the tea, the kids are taking the cups to wash after that. Every time somebody brings something for the tea, they sit and talk about their day. That's a ritual. And that's, again, that helps them to focus in time.
A place where they can explore and express and share their strengths through play and through talking.
Beautiful, beautiful. A place where even hard emotions like sadness, like grief, like anger, like aggressiveness can be contained in some way. Like complex emotion can be contained in some way. It's not always easy for our staff, and that's a point I want to mention about like the person that is holding the space. Yeah, the people that are holding most of our spaces are Ukrainian refugees themselves, women with pedagogical or therapeutic background that we found in the shelters or in the cities that are now engaged in helping the kids in our centers, that are now becoming more like kindergarten or preschools or non-formal education centers, and they are amazing women. Yeah, each of them is a hero by themselves. They passed through hard times. They raise their own kids, and they're giving themselves each day, every day, for other refugee children, handling with complex behaviors, with aggression, with anger. One of the subjects that was very that took much of our time in dealing with the staff is swearing words. Yeah, people used to come to us, to Juan and to me, and say, "I don't know why these kids swear so much." Yeah, they use words that we never have thought that kids will know. And then we thought a little about it, and we talked